There ain't no planting without church growth.
Right.
That period.
Right.
There can be partnership without growth.
Right.
But there can't be parenting without growth. Okay. So what will get you to growth, so out of subtracting and plateauing, what will get you to growing, the same principles, the same thought processes can end up keeping you from reproducing and multiplying.
Yeah.
And the money moment, I think the money line rather is growth is a magnet that can pull both ways.
Mm-hmm.
It can pull you out of decline, but it can pull you away from sending.
Right.
You could apply that same framework to what we're talking about here.
That's right.
If you're just saying, hey, we want to become a sending church, partnership is a magnet that can pull both ways. If you're doing nothing, the initial first step you need to do is to partner well. The problem is you can end up getting very stagnant and just sitting back on your haunches, because to make that move into parenting, there's going to be a lot of pain that is not associated with the partnership.
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
All right. Hey, guys. Welcome back to the Breaking Barriers podcast. My name is Pastor Andrew Hopper, and I'm here today with one of my good friends, Pastor Jonathan Yarborough. He is the executive pastor of Sending here at Mercy Hill. So anything that has to do with raising people up to send them out specifically, so that's church planting, missions. Now, he has a lot of staff under him and things like that, but that's what he's living and breathing and focusing on every single day, sending, multiplication, that kind of stuff. Man, today we have a really good podcast where we're going to break down 6 axioms, 3 and 3, okay, of ways that you partner your way into parenting when it comes to church planting. Partnership is vital as a first step in terms of getting a planting and multiplication culture going in your church, getting a sending culture in your church. Sadly, too many people end up staying there, and that becomes the end game for them when we think it should be a step along the way. And so we're going to try to give you guys a few axioms here today about partnering your way into planting, which is a vital pathway.
Yeah, I think we spent a lot of time talking so much about parenting and getting churches to step into the game that way. Sorry, when I say parenting, I meant partnering. Talk about partnering with church planting. Then when the church steps into that, they can end up getting stuck in that space, and that can be like the definitive, the defining thing of what church planting is I am partnering with other people that are planting churches.
Man, so how do we go, let's just define both terms here, because we are very clear. Like when someone says, man, do you guys plant churches? We say, yeah. And then we also try to say, hey, do you mean parent or do you mean partner?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times right now what gets thrown around is, hey, we plant churches, but what that really meant was we give money and go on a mission trip once a year, right, which is a great thing to do. It's just not exactly parenting. It's more partnering. It's partnering with church plants rather than planting churches as a parent would, have a child. That's more of a parent church plant relationship. So yeah, how would you define them? Like parenting?
Would you even say that being a partnering church, you're not really yet a sending church? Would you make that distinction?
Well, it depends. I mean, I do think like for us, when we were partnering well, we actually were sending, the last iteration of our partnerships was we were sending people out to go with those partners.
So the key then is for you to be a sending church, people actually have to be leaving your church to go do it somewhere else.
I would say, the way I would define a sending church is people are leaving your church to go to the mission field. They're leaving your church to go be a part of other church plants. But, I think even that's sort of still a bridge, right, to step full into capital S, a full sending experience would be that you are stepping from partnership into parenting.
That's right.
So let's talk about that. What does partnership look like? What does parenting look like? I know it seems like we might just say, well, that's same self-evident, but let's go ahead and call out what is obvious. So partnering churches look like what?
A partnering church would be there is a church planter that's coming out of some other church somewhere, and you get connected to that church. You begin to support that church planter by either you are giving them money toward doing that, and you step in, you join their prayer team, and you're praying for them on the reg, or even you may be bringing them into your church and saying, "Hey, you take our stage, and you can ask our people to leave and go with you."
What does on the reg mean?
On the regular, like regularly.
I'm joking. All right, so okay, so that's partnership. St. Terms Church do this incredibly well. I mean, I know for me, my lineage is Summit Church, and I remember very clearly when we were partnering with different churches. One of them was in New York City. It was like, and it was clearly a partnership. But it was used very strategically to move us into more of a parenting model, get our people ready for that, give them an appetite ready, for it, cast a vision for it. Right. That partnership is really good in that area, but it is not church planting per se. I mean, it's helping, but it's not actually being a church planting church. So what does it look like then to be a parenting church is what we call it?
Yeah. Yeah, the shift is that instead of it being another church's church planter, now it's your church planter. It's somebody that has come from inside your house. It's someone that you have taken responsibility for in terms of developing them to get them ready to go. You have taken responsibility for them even after they leave, that you still have a connection to them, that you're helping them take the next steps. You're coaching them up as their church begins to grow. It means that their people, the vast majority of their people that go with them on their launch team have come out of your church. You have championed them. You have invested financially significantly into their church getting started.
Yeah.
So you're taking ownership in the same way that you would take ownership of a child that you are preparing to fly out of the nest.
And so these are not and maybe there's some kind of hybrid middle where guys are doing residencies at churches.
Yeah.
So, somebody is really being sent by a church somewhere else. They go to a residency at another church, and they're getting trained there. Would you put that more in partnership, or would you put that in parenting? I would put it in partnership.
I think I would too.
I would put it in a very high level, very good.
You're saying the church that's the sending church, they're not the ones doing the equipping. They're sending them somewhere else.
Well, what I would say is like, man, what we're talking about in parenting is church raises up someone. Now, there's different training mechanisms they might use, sure. And they might have part of their training be you're going to go to this, or you're going to go to that, or you're going to be part of this cohort, or part of this residency, or whatever. But they're saying, hey, you're our guy from within the house that we've been raising up for years. You're going to build a team, get you trained, and go out. That's different than, a church that opens and says, hey, we have a residency program. You're a youth pastor in whatever state. You're going to come here for a year and learn how to be a church planter and then be sent out from us. I would say that's still partnering. I would say it's really good partnering, and it's good training. And man, we need all this stuff. I mean, but that's not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about like your guy that's coming out of your system, that's probably been an elder at your church, that kind of idea.
Yeah, all of it moves the needle.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's kind of the pinnacle.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I guess, what we're saying is like partnership can look like a lot of different things. It needs to over time, but it needs, we would advocate for, even if it's only once in a church's life, you are trying to move toward a parenting relationship at some point. That's right. In your church's journey. Okay. We promised 6 axioms here. We're going to do 3 and 3. Yep. Okay. Let's talk about, because there's the reality is there's going to be churches that are hearing this that are on various stages of this journey. Some of them have partnered really well for a long time. They need to get pushed. Say, hey man, stop sitting back on your haunches, because you're getting all the bang and none of the pain.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That comes from parenting.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
There's going to be other people, though, who are so new to this conversation, or just have not had the courage to step forward in it, that, man, their first step needs to be to partner well.
That's right.
And so we got 3 axioms to talk about what does it look like to partner well, with some practical wisdom and advice in here. The first one is, man, when you're talking about partnering, especially if it's early on with one of your first couple of church plants, wanting to make sure your people have a good experience with it, we say, man, you want to pick a good horse. Yep. Pick a winner.
A winning horse.
That's right. Pick a winner here. Yep. All right. What does it look like, man? What does it look like to pick a winner?
I mean, when you look at, if you know anything about horses, which I don't.
I do.
But you do. But you can look at a horse and you can tell whether or not a horse is strong, whether or not a horse is going to be successful in whatever task that you're going to give them. And you can do that with church planners too. You can look at them and say, hey, this one here is a little iffy, Don't know how successful he's going to be. He might be able to make it out of the gate and get this thing up and going. We're pretty confident that something's going to happen as a result of this. And then there are some guys that when they get ready to leave, you're looking at them and you're like, this guy's going to blow it out of the water, and it's going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that you want to really invest in. Those are the ones you want to partner with, because the reason is because you want your people to have a very positive image of what church planting looks like, you know?
Yeah. So it's man, it's wiring, it's anointing, it's the it factor.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. It's
kind of the it factor. And you're just like, man, what are ways that you can be certain of that besides just, your own smell test? Like, I just think about, guys that are coming out of places that have a solid track record is one idea.
Yep. Have they grown things?
Mm-hmm.
Do people want to follow them? When they say to people, hey, we're going here, when they turn around, are there people behind them?
Yeah.
Those are things.
I think also assessments are good.
Sure.
They're certainly not the end all be all.
Definitely not.
Right. But they can be kind of helpful especially on the front end and all that. So, all right. So picking a winning horse, first axiom, making sure that, the first person you marry up with is going to be, hopefully, I mean, it's all in God's hands, right? But as far as it depends on you, it seems like there's a good fit, good, successful.
The point is you don't want it to be a risk.
Yeah. I mean, it is going to be a risk. Everything's a risk.
Everything's a risk, but I'm saying
you want to mitigate it.
Some of them are like, we hope this guy makes it.
Right.
You don't want to be in that camp.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good. All right, second thing is, man, you're going to do a lot better, and I have a lot of experience with this because we did not do this well on the front end. All right? But I would say, make sure that you are partnering with a church who you align with in ministry philosophy. Right? Because your folks are going to be going there on mission trips, and you're going to be bringing that guy in to preach, and you're going to want to stand on your stage and champion what they're doing. And if they're really out of whack and not aligned, number one, you're just not going to be very helpful for them. Mm-hmm. And then number two, you may end up kind of getting a side eye from some of your people where you're like, man, what are they doing? Right. That kind of idea. Yep. Because your people are going to your church because you're serving up the recipe that they feel like is the best thing for them, rather than a different brand. So you want to stay sort of on brand, in alignment with people that you're planting. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. I can tell you some of the things that we did that were just not great with this, and some of the problems it created.
Well, I mean, for example, our church is kind of big box church, all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to the way that we go about doing church, it would not be wise for us to partner with someone who's going to lead like a network of house churches. Mm-hmm. You do something like that, and I mean, what is it that we're going to be able to help them grow in when it comes to coaching them and all those kinds of things? Those aren't things that we know much about. That's not our world. They're going to need to have somebody that is also running a house church kind of model to be able to coach them up in something like that. We're going to want to pick somebody that we're going to be able to say, hey, here's what we've walked through ahead of you, and now you can kind of learn from some of our mistakes that we've made along the way, and some from our successes too.
Man, I remember early on we had partnered with a few churches, and we were trying to be good partners. Like, man, we want to bring you guys together on a call once a month. And, man, I'm gonna sit in on that. And I mean, these guys are in early stages, and we had already planted the church that was doing pretty well. And so I'm like, hey man, I'd love to be available to help you guys with some different things. And those calls were dead. Crickets.
Yeah.
And the reason is because these guys had a high enough honor and respect for us to come sit on the call. Because, man, we were giving them money and we had sent people, and they wanted to honor that, So if we said, hey, can you get on a call? They were like, yeah, we'll get on the call. But the reality was they didn't really want anything. Like, they didn't want any of the knowledge that we were going to give.
Yeah.
Because we were not planting the same type of church that they were trying to plant. And so I learned two things from that. Number one, what you said is, yeah, you're right. The questions they're asking, I don't know the answers to. Because I'm not trying to do what they're trying to do. I never have tried to do it. I've never learned from anybody who's tried to do it.
Right.
But then the second thing is they don't really want what we have to give. And so it just creates like, a partnership a little bit in name only. It's like, it's cool. It's like, hey man, we did it and we can celebrate it. We can use it for vision. That's going to be my third one here. but you're not really helping them beyond just sending the money, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, it doesn't help them get better. And it's just like we've launched them, and that's about it. You can't. I remember when we first started talking about making this shift, and we were saying, "Hey, we want to be just as good at pediatrics as we are at obstetrics."
Mm-hmm.
So some churches will just launch people out, but they don't feel that sense of staying connected and helping people grow and all that kind of stuff. And we want them to continue to be healthy, and so there's got to be some sort of overlap. In that philosophy of ministry, so that we can be able to do that.
Yeah, you're going to need them to want to get. You're going to need them to get excited about the things you get excited about.
Mm-hmm.
That you can celebrate things together. You're going to need them to be, really just dialed in with the things that you can coach them on, because they're going to need it, but only if they want it.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then the third thing, and when it comes to partnering well, is, and I'll speak to this because I feel like we've tried really hard to do this. Man, use that partnership incredibly strategically for vision around church planning. All right. So this gets into the icky stuff. Okay. Because a lot of this is, people that have high belief, super high missional, this is going to be hard for them to hear, but this is the reality of it. A partnership is just as much for your people's faith as it is for the kingdom growth that comes from it.
Yeah.
And that's the part where, like, high belief, mission-minded sort of, it's hard for them to get their mind around this partnership is not entirely altruistic.
Right. Yeah.
We think it's a double win, and we want to work it that way. We want your church to do well because we're partnering with you. But don't make no mistake about it. We want our church to do well because we're partnering with you. And we want our people to grow because they know that our heart is in church planning, and you represent that for us.
The one side doesn't have to suffer because of the other side being true. So both of those things can happen at the same time. Like you say, you can get some people that are just thinking about only mission impact from that one church that's being sent out. But the reality is that if you do it the right way and all this stuff is aligned and it begins to cast vision for your people, then it has a multiplying effect. It's not just about the missiological impact of that one church. It's also setting up the stage for what's going to happen after that one and the next domino and the next domino.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. This is a little bit off topic, but it's analogous, okay? You ever dealt with, you're the missions guy, okay? You ever dealt with a person who's like wanting to sit down and they're like, I don't think we should be sending 20 teenagers to Honduras to build a church. That's not effective for the mission. That's not this. That's not 1040 window. We should be taking all that money and just giving it directly to the hardest reach places that are the least reach and the hardest to go. And this is not really missions, or just blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I know what you're going to say. What's kind of our response to that?
That it just doesn't matter. That it's like that, hey, it is important that these people these 20 teenagers going to this place to go sit with kids in some village somewhere, it begins to open their eyes for the nations. And so it's not just an investment in the kingdom with that one short-term trip that they're taking now. It's given them a heart for what God loves, and what God may be calling them to in the future.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard the president of the IMB say, hey, people are 3 times more likely to give, pray, and go if they went on a trip. This is very similar to that, right? Is that when we're thinking about a church planning partnership, we've got to be thinking, how do I use this to make my people 3 times more likely to pray, give, or even go themselves because they're involved in a church that is partnering well?
Right.
And I just think we got to think about it like that. I mean, to me, it's almost like getting your house in order a little bit first. When we were partnering, I wanted to make sure, we're giving money. We want to make sure we're sending a team. But I was uber clear with anybody we partner with. Like, hey, man, if I call you and I need a video, I need you to send it.
Right.
This is not all about you, in other words, right? This is about these people getting their heart tied up with you. I remember we told people early on we were partnering with them. It's like, well, we need to be able to send some mission teams up there, and I could tell. It's like, well, people can kind of bristle at that, like, well, that's putting an undue burden on the church planner or whatever. And I'm like, well, tough.
Well, I mean,
Well, part of it is they need to be, they're going to have to be willing to invest in our people in that way and give them that opportunity if we're going to invest in them.
I just want to be clear on this, that you're not asking something of them that you haven't also done yourself.
Yeah.
So when you were planning Mercy Hill, that's the way you treated the people that partnered with you. They wanted something from you, you gave it to them. I mean, you were down preaching in churches, in all kinds of like smaller settings and that kind of stuff when you were getting going, because you valued the partnership and you wanted to be able to reinvest in their people.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a church in South Carolina that partnered with us that gave us a couple $1,000s. And for years, I went to their missions conference as one of their, and I mean, their missions conference would have 70 people total.
Right.
And I would go down there, spend a night away, because I'm like, hey, they've invested in us.
Yep.
And we're going to make sure that we're investing in their people. And man, the winning horse understands that.
Right.
Like he knows that. He's not rolling his eyes when you need another video.
Right.
He's thinking like, oh man, this is great. This is an opportunity for me to be visible so that they can see that multiplication is the way.
That's right.
And so I would use it for vision. Quick tips on using for vision. Man, if I'm partnering, I'm telling that guy, hey, I need you to come preach a couple times over the next 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Need you to do that. That's a non-negotiable. I'm probably going to need a video or something like that, maybe once a quarter. I'm going to need that for our service, for our offering time. And I'm going to need you to let us send at least one mission team or maybe 2 mission teams a year for the next couple of years.
Because you got to keep it fresh in front of the people.
It's the only way to do it. You've got to keep it there in front of everybody so that they can catch the vision of kind of what's going on there, right? So I think those are some good things around partnering well, but we want to push further, right? Because we believe that one of the greatest joys in leading and pastoring churches is it happens to coincide with the way that the kingdom is supposed to advance, which is through multiplication, where churches can end up having a family of churches rather than just their singular flock that they have.
Right.
That may be it takes 10 years to do one if you're a smaller church, or maybe you can do one a year, or maybe there's churches that can do multiple a year. But getting to that idea of parenting and family is something that we want to push into now. So we've done 3 axioms of partnering.
Let's do 3 on parenting.
Let's do 3 axioms of parenting. All right. The first axiom is fight against the pull of partnership. What we mean by that is partnership is easy compared to parenting. You get all of the bang and none of the pain. So you've talked about this a little bit. What do you think about fighting that pull away from partnering in order to set your sights on parenting?
You can get so caught up in the success stories of what's happening through the partnerships that you have that are going on, that it becomes that's the only way that you can see that you can actually do it. You can end up getting stuck in that place where it's like you look at it and you've seen it happen this way, and so you can continue to do that again and again and again and continue to get wins that way. And it can end up keeping you stuck. Can you talk a little bit about that magnet principle? I think that's important here.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like the magnet idea from exponential is a good example. So exponential would say I heard them say one time like, you have 5 categories of churches or whatever. I might even get these wrong, but you have declining, plateauing, growing, reproducing, multiplying. Actually, I didn't get them wrong. Those are exactly right. So you got all 5 of those. All right. And what they said is the thing that will pull you from 1 and 2 to 3, which is good. We need that, right? Like we're going to talk about that in a minute. There ain't no planting without church growth. Right. That period. Right. There can be partnership without growth. Right. But there can't be parenting without growth. Okay. So what will get you to growth, so out of subtracting and plateauing, what will get you to growing, the same principles, the same thought processes, all that stuff can end up keeping you from reproducing and multiplying. Yeah. And the money moment, I think the money line rather is growth is a magnet that can pull both ways. Mm-hmm. It can pull you out of decline, but it can pull you away from sending. Right. And I look at that, and I think that's true. Actually, I think that's really good insight. Okay, but I thought, man, you could apply that same framework to what we're talking about here.
That's right.
If you're just saying, hey, we want to become a sending church, partnership is a magnet that can pull both ways. If you're doing nothing, the initial first step you need to do is to partner well. And by the way, we should have said this. Man, we've always got guys going out.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody's listening to this and you're like, hey, I'm in, I need a partner, we got a partner for you.
Right.
I mean, we always do. But it's like that idea of the magnet pulling you towards partnership is good. The problem is you can end up getting very stagnant and just sitting back on your haunches, because to make that move into parenting, there's going to be a lot of pain that is not associated with the partnership. The partnership is, man, I trade money and stage time for momentum.
Yep.
That's easy. I mean, there ain't honestly, there's not a whole lot of people like, man, we're planting a church, but it actually just was, man, we're giving 10 grand and we're doing a mission trip there this summer. There's no pain in that. Mm-hmm. And so it can become very easy to sit back and say, man, we're just going to stay in partnership mode forever. And the problem with that is, man, it's really not getting into multiplication at that point, because you got 5 churches that are all church planting churches, but really they're all partnering with one guy.
Right.
And so it's more just like kind of sticking the NASCAR sticker on, you're putting your brand on, but is it really, good to start, not good to stay.
I liken it, we didn't talk about this before at all, and I don't think I've ever made this connection, but I would liken it to, when somebody first starts getting in a gym, they start working out, they get introduced to like the 5x5 kind of stuff. So they're doing like a chest day, the old gym bro stuff, chest day and a back day and a leg day and a shoulder day and an arm day. And they get some success from that. They start getting a little bit stronger with that. And so they do that for like a couple of years. And then the next thing you know, it's like it just kind of plateaus and they kind of quit growing. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to do that, you have to force yourself to try some new things that you haven't learned how to do yet, to work out in some different ways that you haven't tried yet. And so in the same kind of way, people can get that success. It's like, I know how to do this. I used not to know how to do this, but now I know how to do this and I can do this and it feels safe. There's not like there's not as much risk that's going on in this. And so that will keep me from taking the next step that's going to actually cause me to grow and get better as a leader.
Yeah. All right. Second thing is, so first thing is, fight the pull against partnership. Yes, there's going to be pain that comes with parenting, but man, if we want to go to the next level, that's where we got to get, is we can't just sit back. Second thing is to grow. Yeah. We talk about this a lot at Breaking Barriers. We're going to continue to do so, but the number one indicator of if you're going to be able to parent is your church growing?
Right.
Are you reaching new people? This is why, we talk about this a lot. People want to focus on, things like sending and church planning, which I think are very important. Seating capacity is great, but sending capacity is great, but seating capacity is sort of the primary indicator of whether you're going to be able to sustain a sending culture. Now, hey, churches can grow without going. We've said that a million times. Yep. They just can't go without growing. Yep. And so if you're going to be a church that is planting people, you've got to be a church that's reaching new people so that you can kind of put back what is going out. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think that churches that aren't growing might be able to do it once or twice. But when it comes to doing it on a sustainable kind of thing, that's where the growth has to be happening. Yeah. I mean, I've known a few churches that were not necessarily growing, and they planted a couple of churches and had a bunch of people leave, but they just kind of stayed the same size. And when they stay the same size, then they're not able to go do another one. Yeah. And so you've got to have the flywheel turning with the growth coming in, new people coming into the church, because most of the people that you're going to end up sending out down the road, 10, 15 years from now, are going to be people that are coming out of the harvest. Those are the people that you're going to want to be able to send. And if that's not happening, then you're not going to be able to send people out to plant churches in any kind of sustainable way. I'm not saying that it has to be one a year or anything like that, but I'm saying that if you're looking, 5 years down the road and you want to plant a couple of churches within that 5-year time period, you got to have new people that are coming in.
Yeah, and that's a principle. To me, the growth thing is almost a bigger principle than the size thing. Now, the size thing matters because people are going to end up having, you're going to end up having more churches that you can plant. Yeah. But if a church is growing, and has a steady stream of people that are being reached with the gospel, and they're baptizing at some sustainable clip, and there's young people in the church that are getting older, that are going from high school to college and going from middle school to high school. Like if you have that, to me, you have what you need in order to have that first domino fall for church planting. If not, I think when you plant, it's going to end up being a momentum drain rather than kind of a momentum boost. And we've said this before, if you take one thing and make it into two and neither one of them grow, that's division.
Yeah.
That's not multiplying, it's division. I mean, and if you take one thing and make it into two, but those two things never do it again, it's not multiplying, it's adding. Now that's better than dividing and subtracting. But, the idea would be that the adds add, that one becomes two, but those two things grow to the point where they can become two again, and it's a multiplied effect. All right, last axiom here, just real quick is, well, I don't want to say real quick because I want you to push on this a little bit. Church planting is the overflow of everything else you're planting in the church. We say it like this: multiply everything.
Everything.
And you've done a lot of work around this, Jonathan. So how does multiplying everything end up overflowing into church planting?
Well, I think the principle is that if your church can't multiply groups, can't multiply worship services, can't multiply other things, there's no way your church is ever going to multiply churches.
Right.
There are building blocks to this thing. It starts with you're multiplying leaders. And as you're beginning to multiply leaders, then people begin saying yes to more and more kinds of things. So organizationally, you got to start at this place where, hey, we're going to multiply some services. We're going to multiply our groups. We're going to start doing multi-site campus kind of work. And all of these things lead to churches being able to multiply by planting more churches. You can't get to just planting churches if you're not multiplying the other things too. That's the big broad kind of explanation.
And I think it's interesting, just real quick for our discussion. People look at Mercy Hill and they say, okay, you guys are 5 campuses, and that's totally a response to growth in the church. And there's a part of that that's true. Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, the father of all this stuff, when you go back to Tomberlin, I mean, he would say, one of the fathers of all this stuff, you would say, hey, church planting it's not a growth strategy. It's a response to growth strategy. That I'm butchering it, but that's the idea. Okay. That it's not, you don't start multi-site in order to try to get the faucet to turn on.
Right.
You go multi-site because it's already on.
That's right.
Right. And you want to keep it on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's true. But for us, man, we think multi-site is the greatest leadership development and church planning tool.
That's right.
that I've ever seen in my lifetime, because it multiplies leaders in a crazy way. And so, for us, part of our multi-site strategy is specifically because we want to plant more churches.
Right. I mean, when we look at the church planters that we have sent out and the launch teams that went with them, what's interesting when you start looking at where they came from spread across the campuses of our church, when Tanner Hogue left, out of the folks that left to be a part of with his launch team, only 3 of them came from the regional campus. Last time I talked to Nico, who's going out next year, the launch team that he's putting together only had 1 person from the regional campus. The reason for that is because we've been helping our people catch this vision of multiplication. They leave one place that is comfortable for them, where they've got the live preaching stuff that's going on. They've got the best experience at that campus, and they go to a different campus where they're going to have to reorient their lives in a different part of the community. They do that. It's not a much bigger ask for them to now say, yeah, I'm going to go move my life to another city to be a part of a whole nother church.
Right. Like, people don't say yes to the big church planning move.
Right.
Without having said yes to a bunch of other stuff first.
Whole bunch. Yeah. I've called it kind of stacking the yeses.
Yeah.
Right. So you get somebody, we're not asking somebody. I mean, we do say right out of the gate, why don't you go join this church plant? But very few people are going to do that. I guess the other pathway that's taken way more often is they're saying yes to, I'm going to move to this off-time service so that somebody else can have my seat at the 10:45 service or the 11 o'clock service. They're going to say, hey, I'm going to go to I'm going to leave my group and go start another group so that somebody that doesn't have community now can now have community. They're saying yes for the benefit of someone else. And once you can kind of create opportunities for people to put themselves in those positions where they can say yes to those kinds of things over and over and over again, then they're just accustomed to saying yes for the sake of someone else. I mean, that's what the gospel is all about.
I think it's a good place to leave it. I mean, I've had many times I've had people say, well, when our church grows, we would never plant campuses. We would just plant churches. And what they don't understand is that churches like ours plant campuses in order to plant churches.
Right.
And if you've grown, but you've never had to multiply anything to the point of, having excess teams, services, multiple locations, like if you've never stretched the organization to the point of needing all that stuff, I think sometimes people are for a pretty rude awakening where they're kind of like, oh, we're going to grow and then we're going to plant a church. And it's like, man, people aren't ready to go because you haven't stacked any yeses.
That's right.
Yes is up, So, all right. Hey, man, we'll leave it there. Hey, guys, we have quarterly events every single quarter. That's why they're quarterly. And they're one-day events. And, man, there's always another one coming. So these are just designed to be highly practical ways of helping your church break through the next barrier that's in front of you. So you can check them out at breakinggrowthbarriers.com and get you signed up for the one that's coming up this quarter. Thanks.